Welcome back to Central Colorado Ballistics. My name is Wally. By the 1920s, America had entered a new era. Cities were larger, police forces were professionalized, and crime was becoming national news. Bootlegging, organized gangs, public shootouts. The weapons associated with that violence were no longer muskets or revolvers carried quietly in a coat pocket. They were automatic, portable, military in appearance, and the public began asking a new question. Not about militias, not about rebellion, but about control. For the first time in American history, the federal government would step directly into firearms regulation. By the early 1920s, Virginia's firearm framework looked familiar. Private ownership remained legal. Concealed weapon laws remained enforced. Local police carried increasing authority. But the political center of gravity was beginning to move, not within Virginia, but in Washington. The reason was not rural gun culture. It was urban crime. In 1920, the United States entered an era of prohibition. Alcohol production and sale became illegal under federal law. The result was predictable. Demand did not disappear. It moved underground. Bootlegging networks grew rapidly. Organized crime syndicates formed to control distribution. Violence followed. Public shootouts between rival gangs became national headlines. Weapons once associated with military combat began appearing in criminal investigations. One weapon in particular captured public attention: the Thompson submachine gun, nicknamed the Tommy gun. It was capable of automatic fire, compact, powerful, and visually unmistakable. Photographs of gangsters carrying these weapons circulated widely. Newspapers amplified the image of America under siege from organized crime. The symbolism mattered, because policy often follows perception. Before the federal government acted, Virginia moved first. In 1933, the Commonwealth passed a law regulating machine guns. The legislation restricted the possession of machine guns, firearms capable of automatic fire. The concern was not hunting, not militia service. It was the same fear spreading across the country: organized crime using military-style weapons and public violence. Virginia's response showed that states were already experimenting with regulation before Congress stepped in the following year. In 1934, Congress passed the first major federal firearm law, the National Firearms Act. Rather than banning firearms outright, the law used the federal government's taxation authority. Certain firearms now required registration, a federal tax set at $200 at the time, a sum large enough to place these weapons far beyond the reach of most ordinary citizens. Government approval. The law targeted weapons associated with criminal violence: machine guns, short-barrel rifles, short-barrel shotguns, suppressors, even the National Rifle Association, at that time primarily a marksmanship organization, supported parts of the legislation, but the group successfully argued that handguns should be removed from the proposed law, keeping the focus on firearms associated with organized crime. For citizens of Virginia, ownership did not disappear, but a new layer of federal administration had arrived. Enforcement of the National Firearms Act fell to the Treasury Department. through federal offices that had previously been responsible for enforcing Prohibition. Those offices would gradually evolve into the agency now known as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. For the first time, firearm ownership in Virginia was no longer governed solely by the state and local law. Federal registration now existed. Federal taxation existed. Federal investigators existed. The architecture of modern federal gun regulation had begun. By 1934, Virginia's firearm culture had not disappeared. Citizens still owned rifles. Hunters still carried shotguns. Revolvers still rested in drawers and holsters across the Commonwealth. But something fundamental had changed. The federal government had entered the field, not as a distant constitutional authority, but as an active regulator. From this moment forward, the story of firearm rights in Virginia would no longer be written only in Richmond. It would also be written in Washington, and the balance between those powers would shape the rest of the 20th century. Freedom secured, rights defended.